All right, the M1 Garand T37 Flash Hider, real or reproduction. I promised myself I would make this video for the very few other people out there, I'd imagine, who are trying to figure out the difference between an authentic T37 Flash Hider and a reproduction T37 Flash Hider. I found it very difficult to tell the difference between the two, especially based almost purely on online photos. I did have a reproduction, so I knew what a reproduction looked like. But in general, I found a hard time finding one place with all of the information I needed. So hopefully after watching this video, you will be able to determine what you're looking at, whether or not it's reproduction or authentic. Just give you a really brief primer on these T37s. My guess is that if you are here watching this video, you have a brief understanding of them. The T37 replaced the cone flash hider, primarily for the M1D. Came into existence sometime between 1950 and 1955, depending on the source. The cone flash hider wasn't very popular among soldiers, apparently. Neither was this. So this is really, if you are building an M1D or you have an authentic M1D and you are looking to get an authentic flash hider, that's probably why you're watching this video. I personally came into an M1D lottery rifle that was missing its T37, so that's what kicked off this ridiculous exercise. So right off the start, this is our reproduction. This is our 100% authentic T37. Some of the most obvious differences, just by looking at it off the bat, is the finish. The finish on this one is a lot shinier, a lot like a lead pencil. The finish on this one is a lot flatter, a lot more similar to what you would actually expect from military production stuff of this age. This, I think, is from the 70s. Now, that's not to say that this particular reproduction is representative of all of the reproductions. I would guess that there are reproductions out there that have a finish more similar to this. I would guess that there are reproductions out there that have a lot of characteristics more similar to this. But in general, what I have found is that most of the reproductions I have seen, with a couple exceptions, actually there was a couple out of Italy I saw that had this finish. Most of the reproductions had this sort of shinier finish to it, almost like it's parked. The authentic unit is machined or milled, depending on what nomenclature you use, and the reproduction is cast. Got a negative mold. They're going to pour metal into something like this, break the mold away, wire wheel it, finish the edges, finish the metal and whatever coating they're using, and call it a day. And they're probably going to do a lot of those and probably make them fairly inexpensively. Knowing a little bit about manufacturing myself, I can't imagine the actual cost of this unit being more than a few dollars. Certainly the tooling is going to cost a lot more, but I can't imagine it costing very much to make something like this. This is machined or milled. That is a tougher process. That is certainly a more difficult process, and certainly nowadays is going to cost a lot more, of course, than it did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So some of the obvious differences between a machined unit and a cast unit are going to be the machining lines that you see on this. One of the best ways to tell an authentic T37, let me get it up here on camera, is these machine lines right here. I have not seen those lines on anything that I have thought is a reproduction. This unit was machined out, and then somebody took a grinder and ground down through here. I'm sure they had some sort of jig or something, but and then you also see, see if I can get them. You'll see grind marks right along here. So presumably, this was initially manufactured entirely round, and somebody came through on the line and ground it down. Same here, presumably at some point this came all the way down, and then this was ground down. When you're making something cast, there's no need to do something like that after the fact. They'd make a better reproduction if they did. If they cast this round and then came through and ground it, it'd be harder to tell. But on these cast units, you can see one, no lines coming across here, no grind marks here. You know, this has never been entirely round. This was cast this way, almost certainly. And the other thing that you can see, let me see if I can get a good shot of it, is this ridge right along here. No authentic T37 Flash Hider is going to have this indented ridge. And then I don't know if that's showing up on camera, but that is indented. It's not coming out. So those are your big telltale signs whenever you're looking at them in photos. Now, if you've got one in your hand, you can dive a little bit deeper, and we'll do that really quickly. One of the things I noticed about the authentic versus the reproduction is that this here is nice and even. This is a nice round shape here. On the cast unit, it's a little jagged. It's almost squared off a little bit. On the cast unit, you'll notice spots all over where presumably there was some cast marks that were ground down with either a wire wheel or a grinding wheel and then polished out. One thing, if you've got the thing in your hand, I don't know if you're going to find this in photos, is the lines of the authentic T37 are really clean all the way around. And for the most part, the reproduction is just as well. You know, these are pretty good lines. Not quite as good as the authentic, but these are pretty good lines. But what you can't see, let me see if I can get a shot of, is in through here. Along here is very rough because they didn't finish that. And there's no real good reason for them to, especially if they're selling it as a reproduction. Nobody cares if it's a reproduction that these lines are rough down in here. You can see sort of the way my chopstick digs through here. You can really see it sort of looking at it in here that you know, that's where this came out of the cast, and because it was on the inside, there was no good reason for them to grind or smooth that out. Another thing that I read about, and then I didn't even notice it when I was looking at these differently, but when I was reading about the differences online and what I could find, was this beveled edge. On the portion of the authentic flash hider that goes over the gas port, you've got a flat edge. Full disclosure here, the UPS man just pulled up and my dog is probably going to lose it. You have no beveled edge here. This is flat. This is a 90-degree angle right in here. Let me see if I can give you a good shot of that. 90-degree angle, no beveled edge. There is a beveled edge in here, probably because you're threading this on to something. And that's on both sides, here and here. It's flat up against here. On our reproduction, see if I can give you a good shot of that. You have a beveled edge all along that side and a beveled edge all along there. It's probably because when they cast this unit, it was all rough and jagged in there, and it's easier just to bevel it. The bevel actually looks nicer, I think, than the flat edge. It's a good look. So on the authentic unit, we have a set of machine marks or some sort of step right here, maybe not a machine mark. You got a step right here. I didn't find any reproductions that had that same step right around through here. On the authentic unit, one thing that, you know, unless you have this thing in your hand is going to be very difficult to tell in photos. But If you have one of these things in your hand, you've got somebody who's telling you that's new old stock, just out of the packaging, you can actually look for the packaging dust. There is dust on the inside of here that comes from the packaging. It's fibrous. Obviously, you're not going to have that on the Reproduction because it was never in original packaging. It only came from a factory, probably got thrown in bubble wrap and sent to market. So I think that's basically all the physical differences. I did check sizes on these, and they are wildly similar. You know, at the base here, 21.89. This is all in metric. That's the authentic. At the base here, 21.61. That is very similar. And I don't even know if I had 10 authentic units, if there would be, if that's within the level of tolerance they'd allow. You know, thickness of this portion here, you know, about 10.7 millimeters. And on the authentic, 11 millimeters. Yeah, just about 11 millimeters. Again, that is wildly similar. These are very similar spec-wise. These are very similar. I don't know what they are as far as harmonics goes. I don't know what the composition of the metal. I don't know if any of that makes a difference. But nonetheless, those are pretty minor differences as far as physical size. I doubt you'd ever be able to look at either of these and notice a small percentage of a millimeter difference in size. Of course, if you are looking at an authentic one, let's get the Repro out of here, and you find the actual packaging for it, as far as I can tell, if you find packaging that looks like this, I've seen the packaging look a little bit different. It's very, very likely you have an authentic flash hider. I have not seen a Reproduction with packaging like this. Not to say that they're not out there. Thinking about it logically, it's unlikely that somebody is going to go through the hassle of making this type of packaging to trick anybody. That would be my guess. I guess it's certainly possible, but that's my guess. Again, you'll see them go for their highest prices likely with the packaging. So that's it. I hope that this video helps you. I really wish all of the information that I had in this video I would have been able to find prior to starting my search. I did have a couple of people that I would send photos to, probably too many photos. I'd imagine they got a little frustrated towards the end asking, like, is this real? Does this look real? What am I looking for? And most of them were really, really good sports about, one, responding to me pretty quickly, and two, pointing out the differences so that I could, learn what to look for myself. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video and keep on hunting.